Hello, my name is David Tressemer. I'm calling from the United States of America in support of this wonderful conference, the APARA conference. And they've given me only a little bit of time, so I'm going to share this particular section, this particular group of papers that are coming forward to give you some leading thoughts about the conference theme of trauma, life, and the 7 life processes. Leading thoughts from David Tressemer. I'm working with the Association for Anthroposophic Psychology in the USA, and very much present working through the Star House in Boulder, Colorado, USA, accessible through thestarhouse.org. And I'm going to have to do this again. So that was a mini trauma. Take this as a teaching moment. I like that. That was a mini trauma. So you had expectations and they weren't met. And so there's a little bit of discomfort. Just notice that. We'll come back to that. So it seemed like Dr. Tressemer knew what he was doing and then showed that he didn't, and that changes expectations. I love that. These unexpected things happen and they're so valuable. So let's go back to this show. I want to start with the idea of life. The Proto-Indo-European root of life is leap, which also leads to the words live, live, and lively, sense of vitality in body and spirit, and to liver, the organ that secretes, once thought to be the source of blood, the seat, once thought to be the seat of love and passion. Looking at these words that we can learn from. Also to lipo or liparo, meaning fat, oil, rich quality, to stick, to adhere, to hold together. So the sense of life has to do with vitality in body and spirit, something that sticks together, that adheres, that is well supplied. That is fat in the best sense. That is well cared for. And I love this quote from Albert Schweitzer, the medical doctor. I am life that wills to live in the midst of life that wills to live. I am life that wills to live in the midst of life that wills to live. So the sense of life adhering together with vitality. So life is measured by warmth, movement in space, pulse rate. That's a kind of rhythm and movement. And waking and sleeping, that's a rhythm in the day. Growth, that's a rhythm in life, in this course of a life, 72 years or so, and many other expressions of activity. And life is evaluated through awakeness in all 12 senses. I reference you to the starhouse.org on the courses on the 12 senses. Life, vitality in body and spirit, sticking together, adhering, well supplied. Let's look at trauma. Trauma comes from the Proto-Indo-European root terra, which in itself has many words that come from that, which all sort of mean twist, to turn, to rub, to wear down. It comes to these, we'll go through these. It leads to the words throw, or to drill, boring through, wearing out, or to turn or return, or to trite, in the sense that trite means it's worn down, what you're saying. It's all worn down. Or to thread, which means twisted. And thread is made by counter twists going in 2 directions and kind of pulling in 2 directions at the same time. That's how thread is made. and to, this is especially important, thresh and thrash, which means knock apart, as in separate wheat from chaff. You beat on it and then they separate. Threshing and thrashing. So it has a sense of trauma to wear down, to knock apart, and is in opposition to life in the sense of life meaning to adhere, to stick together with vitality. Or trauma can mean mastering the turning, mastering the twisting, mastering the separating in service of life. We'll be looking at trauma from both points of view. We have a whole book. It's on the screen. I'll hold it up too. We have this, look how thick that is. I expect you all know about this book. We have a book that defines all the ways that trauma can go bad. And we have a tradition in anthroposophy of how trauma goes well. 7 life processes, presented primarily in a lecture by Rudolf Steiner, August 15th, 1916, and refined and extended to include 7 learning processes by Konrad von Hutten in the book Awakening the Will. Also in chapter 4, Lifespan Development by Roberta Nelson, in the book that I edited called The Counselor, As If Soul and Spirit Matter, which is a particularly anthroposophic approach to things. Soul and spirit do matter. It's not only the body, we'll get more into that in just a moment. So here is ways in which trauma can go poorly, which is in both of these books, how it can trip up on obstacles, but also how it goes well, how trauma is part of the 7 life processes. Here they are. We're going to go through these one by one, but you get the sense of the 7 life processes, and from bottom left up to upper right, some of the words seem strange in this context, but we're going to go through them so that you understand how they function. It's extremely helpful. Trauma is not just about, I feel bad, here, take a pill. It is much more complicated, and we'll go into that and in some detail. Let's look at breathing. So breathing is the term that Steiner used, very helpful once you get used to it, to mean observing, sensing, exchanging. It really has to do with the realm of Saturn. I'll come back to that in a moment. It has to do with the realm of the physical body and the sensory organs. You take something in. The breathing references the sense of rhythm. You have a pulse, you have a breath, and there's a back and forth there. A corpse does not breathe. A corpse does not interact with the environment in the same way, or at all. Breathing means that you're interacting with the environment. You're taking in sensory information in a rhythmic manner. The realm of Saturn will just follow that. This is a mythopoetic addition to understanding the sequence. We're going to go from Saturn all the way to the moon, and you come to experience that in a way that can assist you to understand the more mainstream medical or psychological phenomena. So breathing in the physical body with rhythm, sensory organs, level of instinct. It just happens. So you look at something, you begin to take in something, you begin to have sensory impressions. That's all. We'll come back to this image. You begin to have sensory impressions. They start coming in. You haven't labeled them yet. That's coming. Sensory impressions, physical level. Breathing. Then we go to warming. Now, warming is in Jupiter. That's why it's an orange, which is sort of a code word for realm of Jupiter in anthroposophy. It's, if you don't know those code words, fine, just take the ride. This warming has to do with beginning to relate, beginning to label. Associations are made to past experience. It excites memory in the thinking realm. What am I seeing? How does it relate to something I experienced before? That's memory. And also the sense of impulse in the will realm. We're going to be following a thinking stream and a willing stream going up through the 7. And of course, all of this requires more time, but even at first exposure, it can be helpful. We're in the realm of the etheric, or the energy body. This is the body, the vital body that makes us go, enlivens the physical so we can go through life. So here we go. This was the image we saw before. Ah, look. That was what we saw before. We start to take in sensory impressions. We don't know what we're seeing in the breathing. We're just taking in sensory impressions. But now in warming, we actually can relate to that. And we can say, ah, person walking, others walking. And you get a sense in the warming level, orientation to up, down. And the experience of light and noticing a walking surface below. Moving to nourishing, the 3rd level. Nourishing has to do with breaking down, digesting, catabolism, breaking down. You use what's useful. This is the level of desire in the realm of will. We're in the realm of Mars. Mars aggressively takes apart what we eat, that's a life process, and also what we take in as learning, what we take in as information or experiences from the world. We're in the realm of the astral body here, the body of thoughts and feelings. And in the thinking realm, it has to do with concepts. We create concepts. So we can say, hey, that looks like James. And James is meeting me to bring a message. And orientation to other people. They're walking, they're upright. The light is from the setting sun. So we bring in concepts and we actually make a conceptual frame for the entire experience of what was in the fog. 4th level, discerning. Discerning has a very penetrating name in anthroposophy from Rudolf Steiner. He calls it secreting. It's like, what? How does this relate to the realm of the sun, secreting? But wait, the realm of the sun is the realm of the individuality, the I. When you can say, I'm awake, I'm here, I'm present, I'm fully available. So individuality relates to individualizing by saying, well, that is part of me. Tatvamasi, excellent tradition. That's part of me. That's taking in, saying, that's part of me. And from that, I can make secretions, as in neurological, well, serotonin, neurological hormones. I can make secretions, which are very delicate and very powerful. And also the last line here, and that isn't part of me, neti neti. And that leads to excretions, being very clear. This is part of me, this isn't part of me. So in that image, which I didn't put in, that image in the fog, it would be able to say, well, that person over there I'm not relating to, but that person, that's James who has a message for me. Really, not just concepts about what's going on, but actually choosing what's part of me and what isn't part of me. These are my people. They're coming to meet with me. This is my world, the light, the street, the beauty. That's the Tatvamasi part of it. And then there's also a neti neti part, which I haven't put in words here, but saying, oh, that's not part of me. That is ongoing in the learning process and in the digestion process at every moment. Maintaining, we're going to go to maintaining now. The 5th level. So this has to do with practicing what's me. You actually take it in, all the earlier ones, you take them in and say, okay, I took this in and I shaved off what works for me. I've identified what's happening and I've shaved off. And now I'm maintaining, I'm practicing. this is the new me. And the new me quite quickly becomes the familiar me, and that's me. That's now me. Now, this also relates to the realm more advanced imagination, in the realm of Venus. Often with trauma, we don't get this far, but we need to understand it in terms of the 7 life processes. And we're going to go to growing next. 6th level, growing, also called developing. These terms intermingle, and they help them, when you bring them together, they help understand each other. We're developing. This is the realm of Mercury. I put it in 2 colors because there are 2 colors that work with Mercury. All the other colors have been consistent. This is the realm of the more advanced etheric energy. This is applying growth forces to growing. What does growing mean? It means when I grow a cell, which mitosis, which happens all the time, every moment, sleeping, waking, I'm growing me. That's in the physical level. And in concepts or new ideas, my life experience, who I am in my personality, I'm also growing. I can grow from what I've taken from the world through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and grow more of that. It relates to number 2 here because number 6 echoes number 2. And on the inside, warming is relating to the outside. After number 4, we're relating to the inside experiences. And we move to reproducing, number 7. We're in the realm of the moon, generating new forms, new life. It can be reproducing and creating a whole new being, creating another being. It also echoes what's happening in the 1st level of breathing. It's good to know these are there because we rely on these latter stages to be able to deal with what trauma brings us, which are mostly challenges in the first 4, as we will see as we go on. Learning new things follows this progression from experiencing the unfamiliar, back in number 1, to creating something new, number 7. At every stage, one encounters challenges to previous habit patterns. And that's how we develop. We actually change. We're constantly changing previous habit patterns. You know, the desire of parents to protect their children has a term now called helicopter parents. They're hovering over their children, you know, making sure that their children are safe and basically in a bubble. But, you know, it's great when children fall over and skin their knee or hurt their hand. And a parent likes to have children who are bumping up against the world and going through this process over and over again. And the parent tries to avoid when the child falls off a roof, but not to avoid a time when a children trips over a clump of grass and falls on the ground. So there's always this balance about what is a learningful trauma. They're all traumas because they all create change. And what has exceeded that. Because excessive trauma breaks the chain. This chain, when smoothly working, has bumps, but they're all bumps that are easily handled as it goes along. For example, shock at the physical level can damage the physical organs. That interferes with this process. Shock at the etheric level, damaging the energy body. So, an IED, an explosive device that goes kabang, and that actually blasts the body, and actually that can be as much as 1 kilometer away. An explosive device can actually go bang. And it's interesting, it affects the breath and it affects the blood. Actually, the blood is the carrier of the shock wave to the brain. So this is which has a physical effect, but also shocks I don't know if you remember, I remember falling out of trees when I was a child, and we call it losing the breath. I couldn't breathe and was gasping for breath. And then because I had hit the back of my head, and my whole energy body went into panic. So that's when that's the shock at the etheric level. It could be the shock at the astral level, damaging the astral body. That is, the astral body has concepts. If you perceive something, even happening at a distance, it doesn't even affect you energetically at first. You see something that is totally wrong and is cruel. These are all labels within the astral body. But then that impacts the astral body, and it then is experienced. It goes into the etheric body and even to the physical body as symptoms or organ failure. And then there's the shock at the eye level, knocking out the eye. That can happen if something is so completely terrible. Let's take an example, shell shock. These are pictures of shell shock in World War I. It was called this on the right, the stare of the Somme. In other words, how people would stare blankly and not relate to their name being said. They would stare because they had been shocked in a deep way. Now, Steiner goes into this in a book that is a bit obscure, but the lecture is fantastic. This is called, the lecture 19 is called the Dissociation Lecture, in which he speaks of the trauma of war. When the etheric body gets knocked out of the physical body, or the astral body gets knocked out, or the eye gets knocked out of the physical body, and bang, it's the bodies are not centered in the physical body anymore, and they all start to act separately, and they have to be coaxed in again through this process. Now I'll leave it all to you to create the ways in which these can be dealt with anthroposophically. The main point here is that trauma is not just one thing. Trauma occurs at all these levels, and to stretch them out and understand them at these different levels is very, very helpful. Thank you very much. I don't see that. Ah, yeah. Good. Excellent. Thank you. You are coordinating so many things to put together this material at a time which is quite challenging for the world, and especially for India. So good for you. Good for you. So I've been asked to add a little bit to the previous presentation, and I would like to add some things, and I will take it to a shared screen and talk about additional comments here to this presentation on trauma, life, and the 7 life processes, which are very helpful to our approach to trauma. So as you recall from what just happened, these are the 7 life processes. It's actually really helpful to write them down. These are really helpful. The names here are, what should we call them? Summaries. They they don't give all the detail, but we've gone over each one. It's good to come to understand them, especially in what we're going into, because we went here at the end of the previous and showing how shocks at the physical level can damage the physical organs, shock at the etheric level can damage the etheric or energy body, shock at the astral level in terms of seeing things or being exposed to media that is disturbing can damage the astral body, and then shock at the eye level can knock out the eye. We talked about all that, and I expect other presenters will go into some of these in greater detail. And this notion that excessive trauma breaks the chain of the smooth going through these 7 life processes in kind of every aspect of learning and life growing. Let's give an example, popping a corner. So we come to a corner of a building, and we go around the corner and we see somebody. So this is, we take this for granted that we go see a corner and we go around the corner. But for some people, such as people serving in military operations in Iraq, we get a lot of this from veterans from Iraq. They don't see it the way we do it. They see it like this. That actually the trigger here is the corner, because they don't know what's around the corner, and they will actually obliterate all the other information. The only thing that's important to them is the corner, because they don't know what's around the other side. They can't just blithely walk around the corner because it could be some really dangerous scene. They actually feel the corner emanate danger. And it buzzes. If you get down into it, it's though it's understood in the astral body as named as a corner, that's a concept. What they feel is immediately in their etheric body, their energy body, as danger. And they wipe out all the other information. Here's an example. In the United States, especially, this happens all over the world to a degree, and through history to a degree. But here, this is a book about children who have witnessed or heard about school shootings or go through drills. This is a child in a drill saying, okay, well, upon my command, says the teacher, I want you all to hide under your desk and be quiet. And this is a child doing that. And the primary trauma or secondary trauma, or I would even say tertiary or third class trauma, is extensive. It extends to millions of school children. And you could even say almost all of them because of what they hear from their parents or hear in the news. So let's go back to our, so children and veterans from wars are understanding the same sort of thing. Even in hallways now of schools that have come back into session, it's been observed that the children walk down the hallways with their back always to the wall, so that they're vigilant up the hallway and down the hallway. So this is their and the level of nightmares and physical dysfunctions of digestion, and we're going to come to that, are widespread. So trauma. But we can understand it in this system. It really helps this system. So we're talking about how the flow between life processes has ceased because of these shocks. Let's look at it this way, that Mars, this level 3, we talked about Mars, level 3 has intervened in levels 1, 2, and 4. So Mars responsible for digestion, which is an aggressive activity. I mean, the biggest war in the world right now is taking place in your own gut. It is what happens when you take food in for nourishment. Ideally, it's nourishing, but that involves digesting, which is the breakdown of complex molecules into molecules that can be useful for your body. So digesting is an activity that belongs in this level, belongs in your gut, belongs in a place where you're not aware about it. You're not aware of it because it is such a huge power that's unleashed, and it's necessary to break down things that otherwise would be poisonous to you if they were in your bloodstream into simple things that are nourishing to you in your bloodstream. But when that digestion moves out into the warming level 2 or the breathing level 1, it can actually upset the system. And when it moves out into the attacks the level of discernment, that is an activity that Mars is out of control. So there's an aggression that is unleashed in your own system that goes into places where it shouldn't go. It also goes into levels 5, maintaining, growing, and reproducing. And it has that impact. It has less of a direct impact, but by stopping these processes, these life processes or learning processes, it actually, there's maintenance is not possible. Growing is stunted. There's research on this, and then reproducing, or actually joyfully going out and making more creativity, or making more other human beings, is affected. This relates to transgenerational trauma, which can be passed down from generation to generation, not only by talking about it, but by genetic impacts on the mother and the father, that actually then transgenerational has been seen to be not only emotional, but physical as well. But it gets passed down through the generations so that reproduction is impacted negatively. So I'd like to talk about 2 guiding principles that help me. You can find justification for this in aspects of anthroposophy, anthroposophical writings. That's fine. But these come from, actually, this one, attachment leads to detachment, comes from my study of the Radha-Swami method of school in India. So that's, but it's very helpful. Attachment leads to detachment. The detachment is necessary because what you've set up through that inappropriate Mars activity, you have set up new habits from which you need to detach. You need, instead of looking at the wall as a, well, we'll get to that, at that corner, there's you're too attached to that corner as a threat. You need to learn how to detach from that. We'll go over some techniques for that. And the second principle is put gold in the mouth of the aggressive king. This came from studying anthroposophy for years for me, and psychology. And it was an image that really, really helped me. That came actually in a meditation. And it summarizes other things, but I thought I would just give it this short version. Put gold in the mouth of the aggressive king. This will calm the aggression. The aggression is the Mars out of control. The gold works at the level of discernment, which is the sun level. And the king needs to be reminded that there are choices that need to be made at the level of discernment. And gold is it could be physical gold, or it could be homeopathic gold, or it could be, which is called aurum, A-U-R-U-M, or it could be golden thoughts. That's the attachment. You attach to golden thoughts that are full of hope and spirit. So you attach to golden thoughts, and you put it in the mouth. That's the digestion again. That's Mars. You put it in the mouth of the aggressive king. Here's where the king, and I think the gender is appropriate here. You could say king or queen. I think the gender is appropriate in terms of human history. So the kings tend to be aggressive, and that's the part that needs to be, that's the Mars out of control. It really is going in too many directions, and it upsets this entire sequence. So when you have the golden thoughts impacting the digestion through the mouth, then you can rebuild through retraining. So you retrain through observation, that's breathing, and through inference, that's the warming level. Remember, breathing, warming, nourishing. Now, observation. So a person with a trauma, rather than blanking out that entire right side, you could lead them into a situation saying, okay, here, we're at a corner, and we're not going past the corner, but let's look around. Let's see what we see. There are cars in the parking lot. It's not devastation. It's not people walking around with guns. There are cars there, which suggests that there are people around, and the people are shopping, or they're convening in some way. There are cars around. The sun is out. There are clouds in the sky. There are plants to the right that are growing. There's even this little green thing here, which is not a, let's see, I'll come back to that. There's even this little green thing right there. That's a sprinkler head. There's an irrigation system. It seems to be working. There's not, do you notice any destruction here? What do you notice? So actually take in the, this is the observation, breathing, which means interacting with the environment, letting the environment come in, the big environment, and what do you hear? In this instance, I took this photograph. I'm hearing people talking behind me. I'm hearing the person who just rounded the corner, which we saw previously. I'm hearing, I'm seeing, she just went around the corner. I'm not hearing any issue. I'm hearing cars moving in the parking lot. So what's your interaction with the environment? And what's your inference? What the warming level? What do you actually associate with these seeing cars in the parking lot, hearing these voices, and hearing actually bird song as well? These are fantastic resources. This goes back a ways, learned helplessness, but it is so important to understanding, and it's summarized to a degree in Bessel van der Kolk's more recent book. And this is coming out, I think this is the second edition of this wonderful book by Judith Herman, talking about how to work with trauma. If you integrate what we've talked about trauma, life, and the 7 life processes in these more mainstream books, you will find that, that you actually have a key to help you apply what you see in these books to trauma. Remember these, they're very helpful. You may want to go over them again. The names are indications, but not a complete summary of what occurs in these 7 life processes. So, those are some additional thoughts, plus some theories about how to approach trauma using even these little formulas I gave, right? Attachment leads to detachment, and put gold in the mouth of the aggressive king, that have been really helpful to me. Thank you.